Hello, I'm Robert Ellsberg. I'm the publisher of Orbis Books. Very glad to be joined today by one of our esteemed authors, Mitri Raheb, who is the founder and president of Dar el-Kalima University in Bethlehem, which is his home in Palestine. He's the most widely published Palestinian theologian, and his works include two previous Orbis titles, Faith in the Face of Empire, the Bible Through Palestinian Eyes, and with Suzanne Henderson, The Cross in Context, Suffering and Redemption in Palestine. His most recent book is called Decolonizing Palestine, The Land, the People, the Bible. This book has a very, I have to say, poignant timeliness, even more so than when it was published a year ago. It came out just prior to the attack on Israel on October 7th and the subsequent devastating Israeli war against Gaza, which continues today as we speak. So first of all, Mitri, I'm very glad to welcome you today. Thank you for joining me. And although I know the most terrible violence is in Gaza, I know it has also affected the West Bank and Bethlehem where you live. And I just want to ask how you are and how is the situation in Bethlehem?
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Good to see you here. We are fine, but the situation is very difficult. It's not only the genocide that's happening in Gaza, but also the settler-colonialism that is increasing in the West Bank. This last week, Israel announced the building of a new Jewish colony in Bethlehem on one of the most historic places. And on a hilltop that is owned mainly by Palestinian Christian families that actually were chased out and displaced from their land. So the violence of Jewish settlers and colonizer is increasing like never before.
Well, before we finish, I would like to, reflect specifically on the ways that the events of the last year really support and illustrate the themes in your book. It seemed to me that there were two major kind of themes, and you've already addressed one of them. One was to name the Israeli occupation of Palestine as an example of settler colonialism. And the second is to address what you call the weaponization of the Bible to provide an ideological cover for the claims of the State of Israel. So in effect, the project of decolonizing Palestine, the title of your book, is very much related to the decolonization of theology. So I wonder if you could just expand on those two themes and what they mean.
Right. I mean, I start my book actually with talking about the colonization of the Bethlehem region. And this last settlement that I just mentioned now, I would have added this in the book to show how actually Jewish settlements are like cancer. They keep spreading and spreading and spreading and killing the native and indigenous people of Palestine because they want to have all the geography, the land, the resources, while displacing and getting rid of the demography, and that is the Palestinian people. And so today, 86% of the land of Bethlehem, which is in the West Bank, it's not in Israel, so it should be Palestinian land, is under Israeli military or Israeli Jewish settler control. And so we live like in an enclave, or if you, to put it in an American terminology, Bethlehem is like a tiny, tiny, small native reservation. Or a Bantustan, to put it in South African terminology. So this is our life experience, and this is why I don't start with the theory of settler colonialism, but I start with the situation on the ground, because this is what contextual and liberation theologians do. They start with the reality. And with that, I tried actually to bring the whole discussion of and theory of settler colonialism into theology. This was really not done before when it comes to Palestine, and it was not done before in many other countries. This is like the blind spot often in theology, and there is a difference between colonization in general and settler colonialism. Because in settler colonialism, you have settlers going to a place to live there permanently with the intention to eliminate the native people. So not to live with them, but to eliminate them. And this is really what we're experiencing now in Gaza. I mean, people see this as ethnic cleansing of people. And you have, Kushner, the son-in-law of former President Trump, talking about Gaza as, if we destroy it, this will be a beachfront prime land. I mean, so this is a settler colonial language, you eliminate the native people and then you build these things there. But also, to be able to do this settler colonization, you need to demonize the native people. They are dangerous, they are backwards, they are terrorists, they are savage, while the settlers are seen as, as the people who bring innovation and progress and civilization, etc. And actually, if you look in most settler colonial projects, the Bible was weaponized, was instrumentalized against the native people. And though actually, Christianity started in Palestine, and Palestinian Christianity belonged to the oldest Christian community in the world, still the West keep looking at us as Arabs. That's the Orientalist perspective that Edward Said talked about. They look at us, even though are Christians, as Muslims, with the whole Islamophobia perspective, and they look at us as the terrorists, while the state terror is not addressed.
The distinction, let's say, between the French occupation, colonialism, and Indochina, a typical kind of colonial enterprise where a country comes in, rules in order to exploit the natural resources and enrich the colonial power. You made the connection between North America, let's say, and South Africa, and I think it's very interesting, as you say. Maybe say a little bit more about that, about how in those kind of enterprises the Bible plays such a role of a new kind of chosen people, the elect, going into take over the territory of savages, and that is somehow a replay of the story of Joshua or something like that.
Exactly. And actually, the story of Joshua right now plays a big role in what's happening in Gaza. I mean, you have the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu on October 27th, when he announced that the Israeli troops are going into Gaza. He said, do not forget what our Bible tells us. And he quoted 1 Samuel 15:3, where God is telling Saul, go and actually kill everyone, young and old, children and women and men, ox and sheep, don't leave anything. And this became like the blueprint. Joshua becomes the blueprint for the ethnic cleansing of many of the native people everywhere. But now this is not history. It's happening now in front of our eyes in the 21st century with a 24/7 coverage. I mean, this is what, I mean, when it happened in the States, say 300 years ago, there were no media, there were no television, there was no live event. But here now it's happening, and the world cannot say like they did with the Holocaust, we did not knew. Today, actually, the whole world knows what's going on. They can see it, they can watch it.
Could you say a little bit more about the weaponization of the Bible and how that functions here? And I'd be interested to know, what that means or what the experience is for a Palestinian Christian whose faith is rooted in that story as well. How do you read that as a Palestinian?
Right. I mean, I have a chapter on Christian Zionism. And I tried to find like a new definition what Christian Zionism is, which is it's a Christian lobby in support of settler colonization, where the Bible is weaponized within a meta framework and local consideration. Let's say in the US, if we took the US as an example, Christian Zionists are lobbyists in support of the State of Israel, which means also the settler colonization of Palestine. But they do this not as a political activity, but they do this as a religious activity within a meta-narrative, and their meta-narrative is either the second coming of Christ, they are anxious for Armageddon, and their local consideration is the populism and American nationalism. This is their framework. And they actually project this framework into Israel and into Palestine. And they support the State of Israel not because they love the Jewish people. In fact, actually, they are anti-Semite deep down because they want to send all the Jews to Palestine so that 2/3 of them will be killed in wars. This is why they love wars. And the warrior God, again, back to Joshua, plays a big role in their understanding of who God is. It's lots about wars. This is why Apocalypse is so important for them. The second coming is so important for them. And the last third of the Jewish people who are sent to Palestine will convert to Christianity. Basically, they are calling for the annihilation of the Jewish people. But Israel, they love them because they support them financially, and they don't worry about the second coming of Jesus. And for us as Palestinian Christians, what is really hurting is that these Christian Zionists even do not even bother to connect to the native Palestinian Christians in this country when they come, say, to visit. And they don't care about our existence, our future, our occupation. And actually, for them, and this is what I highlight again in the book, is the Bible becomes a tool for colonization rather than a tool for liberation. And for me, the Bible actually is a book it's a kind of literature of resistance against empire, which I wrote about in my earlier book, as you mentioned, Faith in the Face of Empire. I wrote about that. This is what the Bible is. But then the Bible was hijacked by the empire to become a tool for colonization, while it was actually the book of people who felt the heat of the empire, and the gospel was giving them the hope that actually it's not the empire that has the last word, but it's the reign of God and God himself.
We published a book recently by Kate Common, who builds on earlier work of Norman Gottwald and other people, to talk about the way that archaeologists have challenged, the historicity of the story of the Exodus and the conquest of Canaan, and the very interesting idea that the early Hebrew people, who were sort of on the outskirts and marginalized by all these great empires, eventually then created a legend or a mythology in which they remade themselves in the image of empire. And that kind of story, we talk about the biblical story. Well, that becomes privileged with all of this effective history in colonial projects around the world, rather than many other stories that are in the Bible that are universalist and non-exclusive. And you talk about, the story of the book of Jonah, for instance, and God's care
Right.
for everybody, even the empires, and of course the prophetic tradition, and for Christians, then the way that Jesus, develops that. So this weaponization of the Bible becomes a selective use of a certain kind of narrative, right?
Exactly. And so this is why we need to decolonize, as you said, not only Palestine, but the Bible. But both are connected. That's the issue. I mean, if we were, say, occupied by the Russian, people in the US will be supportive of us like they are supportive of the Ukrainians, right? But because we are occupied by Israel, which is a state with a biblical name, the Bible becomes a burden for us, because people in the pew in the US, they all the time confuse the biblical Israel with the state of Israel. And then Joshua becomes not what you said, like it's a mythology of the people feeling the heat of the empire, and they want to become like an empire, but it becomes like ethnic cleansing, pure, like we are facing in Gaza right now.
There's another aspect of that Christian Zionism that you also talk about, I guess, picking up on what the late Mark Ellis called the ecumenical deal, in which Christians, to atone for their anti-Semitism and failures to prevent the Holocaust or to support the Jews during that experience, give uncritical support to the state of Israel in exchange for not being accused of being anti-Semitic. And anybody who then crosses that line and is critical of the state of Israel is accused of anti-Semitism.
Yes, exactly. That's the ecumenical deal of now, unfortunately, the late Mark Ellis, because he passed away a few weeks ago, who was really a great friend also. Yeah, and actually, I think what is important in my book is, I think for the first time, somebody talks about what I call liberal Christian Zionism.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think people, when they hear the word Christian Zionism, they thought of these crazy, evangelical, very conservative, populist people. But you have this very sophisticated, liberal kind of Christian Zionism. I mention a German theologian in the book, but one could also think of American theologians like Niebuhr, who is liberal but Christian Zionist and I think this is really important, because these were liberal theologians on everything except on Palestine. And they are actually even more dangerous, because they sound very sophisticated, they sound very liberal, they sound very thoughtful, but deep down they are Christian Zionist. And I think this is something that we need to focus on more and more in the future. So when, I mean, if I don't have that in the book, but if when President Biden says, I'm a Zionist, I mean, he's not an evangelical Christian, right? He's not a conservative, crazy Christian. He is a devout Catholic. But why does he describe himself as a Zionist? This is the kind of liberal cultural Zionism that actually is as dangerous as this other conservative kind of populist Christian Zionism.
Well, I think that there, a lot of people, at least in the United States too, have a sense that they want to be friends of Israel. They do not want a repetition of the Holocaust. They do not want the Jewish people again to be subjected to annihilation, and hope to use that as leverage for moderating Israeli policies to promote some kind of lasting solution, a two-state solution or something like that. And it seems very clear that at least the Netanyahu government and those forces manipulate that, to keep on receiving uncritical support while doing everything they can to obliterate any kind of possibility of that kind of a solution.
Exactly, because actually their blueprint is Joshua.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the dangerous thing. And so, and again, I think we live today in a world where necropolitics is happening everywhere. This death, culture of death. I mean, if you look at Gaza, you have these AI driven weapons that actually surveil Palestinians. They have face recognition and motion recognition, and they strike and kill and murder without human intervention. This is the necropolitics that we are right now is happening in Gaza, but this can happen everywhere in the future. It's a scary world that we are living in. And this is why I think the gospel and the culture of life is something that is so important to highlight at times like this.
Well, in the context of what we've seen of the last year, how it seems I can see a number of different aspects of it. How does that illustrate or underline the themes in your book?
Yeah, I mean, again, starting with settler colonialism, this is what we see happening in Gaza, eliminating the native people, making life unbearable and unlivable in Gaza so that people who are not killed, actually, if you destroy 88% of the schools and all universities, including our own campus in Gaza, was destroyed by Israel during Holy Week this year. If you destroy all the hospitals, the infrastructure, the sewage system, the water system, I mean, this needs 20 years to be rebuilt. And so people will not wait 20 years. How will they survive? So basically, you are pushing the people out. And this is the ethnic cleansing of the settler-colonial mentality so that Israel can have the land. And there is also lots of gas outside of Gaza, in the shore of Gaza, that Israel actually would like to tap in. And so you have the whole settler-colonial thing there. This is one. But then you have the biblical weaponization, not only by Netanyahu, by most of the Israeli politicians, rabbis, many rabbis actually, and American Christians. I mean, just recently, I think 2 weeks ago, Christian United for Israel, Kufi, they had their big convention, and they were citing the Bible that what's happening in Gaza was prophesied in the Bible, and we need to send support to Israel, to finish their job, meaning, to kill all the Palestinians. I mean, what a crazy world. And actually, they talk about the promised land, and this is another theme in my Bible, in my book, the promised land, which is actually the confiscated land. There is the story, just to connect it to settler colonialism, that people in Africa tells that, when the black people were living on the land in Africa, the white missionaries came with the Bible, and they told the black people in South Africa, let's pray. And they closed their eyes and they prayed. And when they opened their eyes, the white people had the land and the black people had the Bible. And this is what actually it illustrates this settler-colonial mentality. So the promised land actually is, again, theologically speaking, is not the tool for the empire to take more land, but actually it was the hope of the people whose land was occupied by the empire, who said, no, this land cannot be taken by the empire, because this land was given to us by God. This is our homeland, but this is also the land. And so today, the whole theology of promised land is theology for the Palestinians, not for the Israelis. But when the Israeli using it, it becomes a tool for colonization rather than liberation. And the same also with the notion of chosen people, because chosen people can be very, chauvinistic. It can be very dangerous. I mean, Germans thought of them being the chosen Aryan people. In Japan, they thought of them being the chosen people to occupy other lands. America thinks of itself as being chosen nation, especially within Christian nationalism. This is very dangerous ideology, but this is not the Sitz im Leben, the original context of the notion of chosen people. But the chosen people is those people, again, who felt the heat of the empire. And the empire was telling them all the time, you are savage, you are terrorists, you are background, you are nobody, you are nothing, we are going to finish you. They stick to this notion that no, actually, God actually has chosen us. And so we are loved. And God wants us to have life, and to have life in abundance, and to have life in freedom. So this is the Sitz im Leben of the chosen people, not, this chauvinistic and racist ideology.
I was very struck by that, and you're talking about the chosen people, talking about the context, and you said that the difference between a message of hope for a defeated, oppressed people versus a religious and nationalistic ideology.
Exactly.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Mitri. I urge everyone to read this book. As I said, it came out a year ago, but as I was reading it and underlining it, I thought, gosh, this speaks exactly to illustrate the situation that we've experienced in the last year. I know that I was thinking almost, the original Zionist slogan that this was a land without a people, and it's almost as if in Gaza now to kind of create a land without a people, which you have to do that. You have to have the idea that these are not real people. They don't count, they're expendable, they're in the way, they're an inconvenience, so they don't really belong there. They're strangers in their own land. And the other aspect of it that we've seen very much, the the charge that any criticism of this policy or of the war is anti-Semitism, and therefore, it has to be silenced, can't be heard.
Exactly. And I think, the book came out just 2 weeks before October 7th. So it came really at the right time. And I think is having lots of excellent reception, almost on weekly basis. Actually, I have Zoom lectures all over the world, talking about this book. Maybe just to finish, I think theology after Gaza will not be the same as theology before Gaza. Exactly like Christian theology after Auschwitz could not have been the same as before Auschwitz. So I think there is lots for us as theologians to do. There is a homework for us to do, how we actually, maybe willingly or unwillingly, we help demonize the Palestinian people because we read the Bible with the eyes of Zionism, which actually created lots of harm to the Palestinian people, which is still happening in Gaza today. And so we need to decolonize that so that everyone can have life and have it in abundance. And hopefully this will open the eyes of people to get engaged politically and religiously to create a new reality in the land called Palestine, so that the promise of the land will be the promise of peace with justice.
Thank you very much, Mitri Raheb. I think your book, Decolonizing Palestine, the Land, the People, the Bible, written before the war in Gaza, will be a crucial work in doing that theology after Gaza. Thank you very much, and I hope you stay well.